Let me introduce you to the AvidXchange system, which is used by community management for the processing of their invoices and payment of their bills. Here's the icon on my Windows 8 startup screen for AvidXchange. I'll click on that. This opens AvidXchange. I have to sign in. My username is my email address. Bear with me. And password for the AvidXchange system I use is a 17-character password with a special symbol. Hopefully I'm typing this correctly. Log in. I must have typed it correctly. This is the welcome screen. It welcomes me. Welcome, Frank. It knows who I am. I would click on this to log out. But what I'm going to do instead is look at the left side of the welcome screen. The message center has instructions to users who might be sending bills in. It asks them to email directly to AvidXchange, that is community management bills, CMC bills at avidbill.com, okay, using PDF files only with one invoice per PDF file. Over on the right, you may notice now the pending approval queue has an indication that there are no invoices awaiting Frank Brady's approval, and that's because I don't have approval capability within this system. It was originally planned that all board members would have approval capability, and they were trained on this system, but as it turned out, in the past it was decided that Katie would have the approval capability. Below is the invoice search form. All of this comprises the invoice search form. All of these white areas are areas in which I can make entries and as a result have various searches done for invoices. Let me try one. I know invoice number 000032. I know what that is. I want to show you. Once I have the invoice number in, I can search for that by going to the lower right-hand corner and clicking on search. Here we go. At this point, you'll know there is a one-line table at the bottom of the screen. If I were searching for many invoices, this table would consist of more than one item. Possibly, I'll show you that later. There are 8 columns, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Each column represents one field. The first field is called the invoice number. It has 3 items below it. Invoice number quad 032. Second column, entity, Madison Crossing at Birch Hill is entity number 592 in Community Management's system of clients. Community Management has as many as 100 different HOAs or properties that they manage throughout the state of New Jersey. The third column, PO number, refers to purchase order number. Some users, some HOAs, some companies that use AvidXchange may use a purchase order system. We don't. The next column, invoice date. This invoice was entered, the invoice date rather was 10/31 of 2016, entered by supplier OBMUA, that is Old Bridge Municipal Utilities Authority, or in other words, the water company. Under status, approved, and in fact this particular one, not only has it been approved, but it has been paid. I'll show you how I know that later. Ordered by, I've never seen an entry in this column. And finally, the last field or the last column, the invoice amount column, is the important one, of course. We were billed for $29,033.83. Let's examine this in a little more detail. Let's go back to the first column, invoice number. I'll click on this icon. This is called, as it shows you, the quick view icon. Let me click. Takes a second, and it brings up a screen that provides information that was gleaned from the invoice as it was sent into the system. Property manager workflow. The property manager is Katie in this case. Below you can see again property codes. We're code 592 in community management or community services. Madison Crossing at Birch Hill. Accounting codes are general ledger account number 5731 is the general ledger account we use for water sprinkler expenses. Description, I believe this is actually a phone number. It's used as an account number for this invoice, and again the amount. And I suppose this column, I've never seen it actually in use. It could be that for certain bills, in fact I know there was one last year, Rescom, where we broke it down into one where it was 70% used for general repairs, non-mid-rise repairs, and 30% of their bill was allocated to mid-rise bills. But now at this point, I believe 100% shows at all times. All right, let me leave that screen. Okay. Secondly, under invoice number, there is what I call the document icon, the invoice image or document icon, which actually brings up now, I think you can see at the bottom of the screen, as when you download files from an email. I have a PDF for this invoice. I can open the invoice and view it, or I can save it and store it, or I can cancel it. Let me open it. Let's take a look at the invoice. This is the actual invoice that was emailed to us in PDF form from the Old Bridge Municipal Utilities Authority. Okay, and as you can see, why did we have to pay $29,000? Well, we used 4,137,000 gallons of water. That is over 4 million gallons of water. I believe at one point I divided this out and found that it was basically $7 per 1,000 gallons. We used that water at the water meter called Irrigation Laysbeth Beach. It must be in that area between around Laysbeth Court and Beach Drive. We used that water between July 2nd and October 4th. Of course, that carried us through the hotter area of the summer, and therefore that's the larger bill. That particular bill last year was in the $35,000 range. Okay, let me leave the invoice and go back to the invoice search screen and proceed on with one more item. Under invoice number, you'll see the invoice, but it's clickable, underlined, colored in red. Let me click on that. That brings up another screen which has many entries. One part of it's called the header, invoice number, vendor ID, account number, status approved, invoice amount, and distributions, the date of the invoice due date. We have to pay that within 30 days or maybe subject to a penalty of 18% per year charged on a daily basis. Within this item, the image, of course, I mentioned before, the image we saw, it's available. Vendor, this tab, some background information, where to send the check. Line items, oh, looks to me like they have the unit per gallon. No. Total for the gallons, okay, 4,137 gallons, and of course the fee. Water meter service. Next one, workflow. That previous one, that was not a good explanation, of course. Step 1 of the manager's workflow, property manager workflow. What Katie had to do was review the invoice, take a look at it, be sure it's ours, be sure it's correct as best she can determine, code it for the appropriate general ledger code. I believe I showed you that before, so that this particular item would be charged to our water sprinkler instead of water for the clubhouse or water for some other building. The buildings use water, the clubhouse uses water. Different bills, different accounts, and of course she has to complete the approval, which she did. Let me go on to history. Interesting. You'll see 7 lines here. The first 4 lines are dated November 7th, which seems to me to mean that we received the electronic submission on the 7th. Okay, even though the invoice is dated October 31st, we received it on November 7th. 4 operations were carried out at 2 p.m. The last was assigning a workflow to Katie, and then on the 9th at 12:21, what Katie did was carried out 2 steps. She had to do some editing on the invoice, and she had to approve the invoice. 8 minutes later, Anna Krasafik at accounts payable at communityservices.com, which in other words is a worker at the Clifton main office of community management. She added the invoice to a batch for payment, other items, other checks, and you saw earlier, I believe, did I show you? No, I didn't, that this was paid on the 10th. Did I miss that? I may have. Let me go back and try something else, for example, just to show you something. Let me clear the search. Let me key in an invoice date of, let's say, December of 2015. December 1st is when the last fiscal year began. Invoice end date. Let me key in November of 2016. November 30th of 2016 was the last day of the last fiscal year. So what I'm going to try to get are all the invoices that were approved during the year. Search. Now what you may see is a list of more than one. In fact, this is 1 page of 30 pages. I believed I counted this up and found there were 23 items per form. So 23 times 30, I think that gave me 690 items were processed and paid during this past year. Something else we might want to look at is any of these fields that have the little arrows. Invoice date. Right now it's in reverse order. If I click on that, it changes it so it's in ascending order. All the bills from December 1st, then December 2nd, then December 3rd. So we can do it that way, or we take the supplier, click on supplier, and that will be changed to an alphabetical listing. I like this one because if I'm looking for one particular supplier, information on that, for example, AMJ Electric, what did they do for us? When did they do it? What are the invoices? I could look at, and here's a nice one, $1,750. You look at that invoice. That pertains to a point earlier in the year when it was pointed out that 7 of our roadway lighting lamp posts, the 7 lamps were not working, so the fixtures had to be removed and replaced with 70-watt high-pressure sodium vapor ballast kits with transformer and igniters and new lamps. The 7 fixtures cost $250 each. Labor and material, $1,750, and that was the invoice for that. Let me go back on that and let me see, where is that $1,750? If I look back, I think if I look at the quick view, yes, no, that's not the one I wanted to look. Oh, I know. Let me go back on that. Let me go back. Okay, what's the one I want to do? You look at the invoice number, payment. If I didn't do this before, let me do this now. Check number 3363 was written on 3/28/16, probably electronically. Okay, and it was for $1,750, and it cleared on April 8th of 2016. Okay, I think I've had enough fun. I'm going to leave this now, but let me go back and do what I always do, which is to clear my search screen and then log out. I hope this has given you an introduction to AvidXchange. Let me see if I can get us out of here. Oh, I have to get rid of all these documents. And now I